I didn't know the theme was first, but I'm gonna try to fit it into the theme. It's gonna be.
Anything fits into that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is my first time approaching the Mexican border, and then my first time inside Mexico, both of which were a complete disaster. So I'm gonna try to make sure I fit it in the time here. So the first time I approached the Mexican border, I had just gotten expelled from school. I got a poor grade in Spanish immersion, and the teacher kind of just asked me, what grade did I need to not get expelled? Because I was on probation, because I had dropped out and I was returning to school, and the circumstances normally wouldn't get you expelled, but because I was on probation, it was a serious issue. And I was at my hearing, and my philosophy advisor put in a good word for me. And it just so happens that the academic dean of students really looked up to my philosophy advisor. So he was ready to let me go, but it turns out that I put all these flyers around the school, regarding some day of like protest and not attending classes, and he was like really upset about that, and put out an all faculty email, but it was kind of anonymous, so no one knew that like I was responsible for putting up the flyers, and I told him at the hearing about this, and it was kind of a disaster. So I went and waited in the next room for about 45 minutes while they deliberated and read my 20-page essay about why I shouldn't be expelled. But I ended up getting expelled anyway. So I walked about 10 plus miles from Hamilton College in Clinton, straight to the train station, and I got on a train. I got on a train to El Paso. So went out to Cleveland, and in Cleveland some interesting people got on the train, and one guy was a guy that worked on oil rigs, but he was also a studio bassist, and he wrote songs. And he had a hat that said "Fool Soldier," and he was Native American, and so he'd write country or western songs about with Native American themes. And there was also a guy that was in this older guy. He was in a big band and had lots of money and lived on an island off of Long Island. And he was in the band Courtney Love, which I had never heard of before or looked up since. But they were interesting people to be on the train with. So the train goes to Cleveland and then down to East Texas and then across to West Texas. And I get off the train, and we've been on the trains. There's a lot of these breaks where you get off and you might not be moving again for 10 hours or so. So I was hanging out with these couple of guys and a couple other of our friends that were with us. And so when I got off in El Paso, they kind of knew that I had no clue what I was doing. So I didn't have any money, and actually didn't even have any ID because I had been jumped a couple years prior, and my wallet was taken. And in one of the best neighborhoods in the city that I live in, Utica, and I never got a replacement ID. Back then, the times were simpler, and you could open up a bank account just with a college ID. But and I did that. But in El Paso, you could walk right across the border. There's a bridge, and you could just walk right across if you just have, if you have a valid government-issued ID, which I didn't have. So I ended up sitting outside of the train station, and supposedly El Paso touts itself as the most secure train station in the world, and they have these guards that carry revolvers, and I would hide somewhere out there, and it's freezing because it's in the desert. I had 2 pairs of jeans on and just going into hypothermia, and they'd he'd find me and send me somewhere, and I don't remember where I went, but I just kind of walk around the city a little bit, and then eventually I went. Because it's right on the border, so I was going to sneak across the border because I couldn't go across the border, and there was just some school or something next to an industrial building, and there's kind of a hill. It was all sandy, and I slept up. I tried to sleep up there, and there's just a fence, just a tall fence. It's 12 feet or something. It's barbed wire. And it's I could just climb that and get right across. There's some houses on the other side, no big deal. And in the morning when I wake up, there's I'm about ready to get going. I'm gonna go climb the fence. And these three planes, I don't know, F-16s like are just flying like real slow, like right overhead. Like I didn't know they could fly so slow. And because I'm on this hill, like they seem like they're right above me, just going, just like monitoring the border. And I kind of got freaked out. So I ended up going back home. Luckily, I was able to call my dad or something. Or I had a credit card that was able to use because I was actually broke. But I was able to go back home. But then some months later, I ended up doing Hurricane Katrina disaster relief work. And after a little more than 5 months, I was talking to a kid named TJ. I had just finished digging ditches for a community garden. I dug ditches for a month, and 6 days a week for a month. And I was pretty upset with. Sorry, I'm going to drink some water. I was pretty upset with how things were going there, and just the country. And I was going to join this revolution. I had heard at some point about Subcomandante Marcos and the Zapatistas. So I was going to. Yeah. It just so happens that the Gulfport Airport has flights 1,000 miles south in the same time zone to the southmost airport in Mexico, which is actually nowhere near where I needed to go. I still needed to go west into the Yucatan, but I did that one day. So I just up and said, all right, I'm leaving this. I had this argument with this kid about politics or something, and I grabbed Barry Lyndon off the bookshelf, and I have an MIT water bottle that I had, and I didn't have any bag or anything, just the clothes on my back. And I had some money that I had taken from a credit card. Then they gave me these checks where you could get cash out of an ATM or something. So like way before, because I knew my credit was going to go to shit. So way before, 5 months prior, I had no money. So I withdrew the $500 and knew that it was going to be, just bad credit forever. And I used part of that. And part of like a buddy pass my uncle got me for Delta, and I was gonna fly to Oaxaca. Except the thing was they had these really old machines, and you had to like call and do it all over the telephone because the machines couldn't handle like credit cards or something. Plus I had to like split like credit and cash. It was like the buddy pass and cash. I had just this weird thing, and then it was late, so I missed the flight. So I couldn't call people back from hurricane camp to come pick me up. So I had to end up sleeping in the woods outside the airport, or trying to sleep. I didn't actually get any sleep. And it just turns out that all planes leaving after that were canceled like in both directions, supposedly because of weather. And the next day when I was able to get the flight, they had brought in a bomb sniffing machine overnight. But I did actually make it to Oaxaca, and I had no idea what I was doing. And the cab driver was asking for 30, and I only had $20 on me. And I was all upset, and I didn't really speak a word of Spanish. And I thought he was asking for $30. Apparently he's asking for 30 pesos, which is much less than $30. And I was like having this like heated argument with him. I was so angry. And he went to report me. He brought me back to the airport and went to report me to the stewardess that he knew that was bilingual. And I just said, oh, I'm a college kid, and I'm just going camping. And really, I was just trying to get out of this crater, because it turns out that Oaxaca is in a crater. And I was just trying to get past the mountains and the houses and the barking dogs to get into the woods. And I was going to kind of try and do like a survivalist thing and work my way east to Chiapas and then try to find, try to network with the EZLN and the Zapatistas. But, yeah. And so I tell this lady and the story, and she's like, oh, it's no big deal. So I go to get back in the cab. I'm talking to the cab driver. I'm going to leave this guy alone. But then some police officers start coming. The airport security, they have this like SUV that's like really nice, and they have like fully automatic weapons, and the cab driver gets freaked out. It's like, all right, just get in the cab. So he drives me a little ways away from the airport, and we have another argument, kind of. We don't really understand each other. And I get out. I drew him a diagram before, which really freaked him out. I was trying to show him that I was just trying to leave the city, and I was not trying to go to the hotel and what have you. But I ended up getting rained on, and my passport got ruined, and I woke up to a volley of gunfire. Turns out there was another revolution happening in Oaxaca at the time with this political movement, the APPO, that I was not aware of. And it was kind of like the Mexican National Guard, and was brought in right around that time, right as I was getting there. Things were shit was really hitting the fan. It had built up over a long time. And I slept outside the airport another day. And then I heard some more gunfire and things, and I heard people marching in the streets, shouting in Spanish, but I didn't know what was going on because I didn't do any research before I went there, and I didn't know what the deal was, And I called my dad and told him, Dad, I need you to buy this. Like, I hadn't talked to my dad in 5 months before that. I'm like, Dad, I'm in Mexico. I need you to buy this ticket. The number is, and I had this like little number where he could call up and use his American Express to buy a ticket. He did that, and I was able to come home. And I went on the computer and I saw all these pictures of like buses on fire, and there was like this autonomous area around the university where protesters were staying that the government couldn't officially go into, but eventually they did. And I don't know, like I survived. But apparently, like college students wanted to see, because like people were getting detained and tortured who were trying to join up with the APBO at the time, so they started profiling college students specifically for detainment and torture. So ironically, these kids that wanted to go see what that was all about, other kids, these were like Mexican kids. I heard that they got detained and tortured, and fortunately, I got out of there. Except when I was going back to San Antonio, I was walking out of the baggage area, and this guy freaks out. And he goes, "I don't have any bags." He's like, "Why don't you have any bags?" I'm like, "Well, I travel light." And he's like, "Well, where are you heading?" And I'm like, "Syracuse." And I hand him my tickets, and he freaks. He's like, "It says Cleveland," because there was a transfer. And then he's like, "Send him through the X-ray." But I had him getting detained and interrogated for a half hour. Like, asked if I had bombs in my body and things. Back then they didn't touch you. Like the TSA, there was no pat downs. Like I got interrogated for a half hour because I might be a terrorist or something. I had no bags, it's kind of sketchy. And back then I had like long hair and a long beard. But I just went home. I went back to hurricane camp for another couple weeks, and I went home again. And this is a story that my friends make me tell people, but I think I need to rehearse it a little bit more. But thanks for listening.
That was great. Thank you, Marco.